Welcome to Wisdom Breaks. I'm your host, Dr. Addie. Today, we got an awesome subject, relationships. And our feedback was so great with so many questions that we're going to have to divide this into several episodes. So, if you want the 411 on how to build a better relationship, stick with us. We'll be right back. This question comes from Greenville, South Carolina, and it reads, how do you implement boundaries when you're dating? Good question. First, we would have to identify your definition of dating. Everybody thinks of dating in a different manner. Some people only date someone that they plan on marrying. Some people just date everybody. Every week they're going on a date. Anyway, so once we define the boundaries, the perimeters of what we mean when we say dating, then that's when you establish your boundaries. What is it that you want? What is it that you want? Now, for me, dating is for the pre-intense of getting married. Now, I read this book one time, and it was so interesting because it gave this song, one of my favorite songs by Kenny Rogers. It says, know when to hold them, know when to fold them, and know when to walk away. So it was saying that when you're dating, you both have to be on the same sheet of music. Like, what is the ultimate goal? Is it marriage? For some, it may be marriage. Some people just dating somebody to have sex. So again, what is it that you want? So if it's marriage, and so the person that you're communicating with, if that's not a goal of theirs, then fold them, move on, next. Now, if you're dating someone and they are looking for a spouse just as you're looking for a spouse, then you set those perimeters around. Know what it is that you want to do, what you're not going to do, and make sure that you're in agreement with those things. And then that way you don't waste your time. I try to tell people all the time that the time is your life. That's what you're paying for out here. That's what it's all about. And it's no sense in wasting your life on something that you're not going to be vested in and not going to be vested in you. So this is how you do it. You make sure that you both are first on the same sheet of music, going the same place. Don't just get caught up in something and then realize, oops, he on train going north and I'm going south. So figure that out first. And then if it is, you'll know how to put it there because you know what you both want. Okay, this question comes all the way from Barbados. And it says, is a relationship 50-50 or 100-100? Good question. Because we're living in such a selfish society. And people are generally saying, I'm not going to do no more for them than what they're going to do for me. So when you're living like that, that's what you're going to get. But in a relationship, each individual have to give 100% of themselves. Now, if you just got 50-50, you still got 50. But if each of you are giving 100%, then you got 100. So you have to make sure that they're giving 100%, that they're 100% vested, and you're 100% vested. And when you do that, you usually come out on top. Okay, our next question is coming from Greenville, South Carolina. This is a really good question. It says, what is the best way to resolve feelings for someone when closure is not possible? Now, that's a really good question because oftentimes we think that in order to move on or to have closure, that we just have to say something to that person. We got to say the last word. I know I used to think that way. I don't know about you, but I sure did. I used to be like, let me just make one more phone call. I got one more thing I need to say. But oftentimes, when the other party is not available, and sometimes when you just don't need to do it, sometimes you just have to resolve within yourself that, this relationship is a wrap. And for your own peace of mind, for your own peace, then you have to move on. You have to walk away and just release that person. I had a young lady telling me, I just need him to call me and apologize for what he done to me. And I was like, honey, you don't need to resolve this thing if he never called you again in your life. Because if not, you're going to end up bitter. And when you end up bitter, it contaminates everything else that you do. So we have to find that place within ourselves that even when that person is unavailable to give us closure, or we are unable to get that closure from them, that we can still shut the door and say, you know what? I learned the lesson. Let me move on. Thank you. This question comes from Greenville, South Carolina, and it goes, Dr. Addie, how do you know when your relationship has reached its capacity? Wow, that's a very interesting question. Well, the way I see it is when a relationship begins to take more of you than you're willing to give, honey, you have reached your capacity. When you find yourself in that relationship beginning to regret what you're doing or that person, or feeling some kind of way, and you no longer have the grace for that relationship, then you've reached your capacity. I remember when I was in a relationship and I was like, oh my goodness, I was dealing with different things that the other person was doing, and I was like, okay, this is enough. And then initially I had the grace to like, okay, forgive and keep it going. But next, that grace went out the window. I no longer had that grace. And I knew at that point that relationship had reached that capacity. And I needed to make an exit before I became something other than what I knew I was purposed to be. So you'll know because you'll no longer have the grace to deal with it. Now, this question comes from Greenville, South Carolina as well. And it says, what happens when you have difficulty connecting with your spouse's family? I often say when you are getting married that you're not just marrying the spouse, you really are marrying into that family as well, and vice versa. So a lot of people be like, well, I'm marrying you, I ain't marrying them. No, that's not true, especially if your spouse have a close relationship with their family. Now, sometimes things happen before the people get together. It all depends on how the dynamics went in order for you to even meet that person. And so when those dynamics is kind of messed up, you have to come back to the drawing board, and then you have to allow time and space to come in. So now they need to see you in a different light. So, and then again, I can't iterate this enough. Love will draw them. When you walk in the love of God, it will draw them to whatever it is you need to be. Sometimes we allow them to draw us into their madness, into their mayhem. And you can't do that. You have to learn to draw people by the love within you. And that changes everything, because it changes the atmosphere. It changes the situation. I had some people say, man, she says some really harsh stuff, but she's so sweet and so loving, you can't even be mad at her. So love changes the dynamics of any relationship. Initially, you may find that people try to resist it, but if you stay consistent in that love, I guarantee you'll find that family coming together and connecting. Okay, this question comes from Sierra Vista, Arizona. And this question reads, as a woman, why should I dumb down in order to stroke my significant other in order to ensure his ego in a relationship? That's a loaded question. Dumb down. Well, that's not Dr. Addie's vocabulary. I believe that you need to be authentically who you were created to be. And if you're with someone and they're not secure enough in who they are to receive you for who you are, then maybe you can go to counseling or something. Because I don't believe in dumbing down to stroke anybody's ego. Sometimes society have us think in those terms and those ways, but the way that we're created is to be authentically who we are, And so the question becomes, were you who you were when you met him? Or were you dumbing down then? Because my mom used to always say, whatever you start off doing in a relationship is what you're going to have to continue if you want that relationship to work. So if you were dumbing down in the beginning just to get him, then honey, you're going to be dumbing down to death do you part. Unless you get some counseling. If you get some counseling, maybe things will work its way out. But again, remember, be authentically who you were created to be. But thank you for tuning in with Wisdom Breaks. I often think about relationships because that's my heart. As a counselor, I'm generally doing counseling with that. But often when two people fall apart, sometimes that's what it needs for them to fall back together. So tune in for episode 2 of Relationships, and thank you for joining in Wisdom Break.
Send your questions to Dr. Addie at a.mccafferty@aol.com. You may also follow her on social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can purchase Dr. Addie's book, Beyond Betrayal, Standing in the Midst of Adversity, by going to Amazon.com. Or you can visit her website at www.addiemccafferty.com.